Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Mag Show. Today, we are going to be talking about my long-awaited Doom the Dark Ages Marinated review. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Doom the Dark Ages is the third installment in a reboot trilogy that started all the way back in 2016 with 2016's Doom, and then of course in 2020 with Doom Eternal, both receiving universal praise, and with 2016 receiving on a Metacritic an 85 on a PC, 87 on Xbox, and 85 on the PlayStation. Doom Eternal followed that with an 88 on PC, an 88 on Xbox, and an 87 on the PlayStation. My personal view is that Doom 2016, with a slightly lower score than Eternal, is actually the better game. I found that the platforming and traversal of Eternal took away from the core experience, but that's just my opinion. Anyways, on to Doom the Dark Ages. It's currently sitting at an 85 Metacritic across all three platforms of PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. Let's dive into my Doom the Dark Ages review. Anyone familiar with my Marinated reviews, I play the game once before launch, I like to sit on it for a little while, I play it again, and then I let it marinate before I give my final verdict. I give all my initial scores, and then of course I give my Marinated review score, which will be my final score. Let's get into each category, and I'm going to discuss what I think about it. Now, first things first, I want to get into the story. Suffice it to say that this is a Doom game, and the story is never truly the central focus. However, I did find in this one that the story was actually quite unique. It was interesting. It was engaging enough to me that I cared about the cutscenes enough that I wanted to get to the end and see what was going to happen next at the end of each chapter. Now, as I always do with every one of my reviews, I do not give out spoilers and I do not give out plot points because some people take their time. Sometimes it gets into backlogs, and therefore, everybody has time to be able to finish the game as quickly as some other people, right? I'm not one of those guys either that can finish a game in like 26 hours, and then all of a sudden, by the third day, I've already got spoilers up on the internet. That is not the way I roll. That's not the way I do things. Anyways, let's carry on. Doom the Dark Ages is a prequel to Doom 2016 and is the rise of the Doomslayer. Now, yes, he does already exist, and he already exists, but this is his rise to prominence. By the way, fun little fact, I just found out yesterday that his actual name is Flynn Taggart. That's right, the Doomslayer's real name is Flynn Taggart, and of course you can find that in Doom Eternal. There's an Easter egg in there where you can find out the name. I just happened to come across it by accident. But either way, here we are with that new information. Anyways, I won't rob you of where the story goes and what happens with the protagonist and everything else, but either way, I found the entire game quite interesting when it came to the story. Now, let's get into the gameplay and the combat. This is exactly what we're here to talk about, folks. This game is exactly what a Doom game should be in a lot of ways. Fast, fluid, it's loud, it's violent, it's brash, it's thrilling, which is what this kind of video game needs to be. If you got a damn good set of headphones, boy, are you ever in for an audio treat. But either way, the biggest thing in this game right now, of course, is the introduction of the shield. It's a blessing and a curse, okay? That's the way I'm going to put it now. Like the Hell Surge attacks, they're very, very cool to be able to repose and to parry. And if it's done right, it's followed by a loud chiming bell. It's like a bong, and it does that. It lets you know that you did it properly, of course, with a tiny bit of a slow motion kind of view to it. And all of a sudden, it kind of slows down a bit. You know that you parried well. Now, the other thing is that when it comes to that, you look at the parry becomes a little bit tiresome after a while. And the reason why is because what ends up happening, you start hitting bigger enemies, getting to bigger enemies and bosses, and a lot of times their attacks are so ridiculous, it's almost like a bullet hell, that all of a sudden you're parry, 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 and then all of a sudden you're like, holy mackerel, it sounds like the church bells in a small town. All I can hear is bing, bang, boom, bong, bing, bang, boom, and it's getting a little ridiculous after you parry like 25 times, and then I'm like, I just parried like 125 times in a single boss fight. It gets a little bit tiresome. Now, in that respect, combat variety, something else I wanted to talk about here. I felt that sometimes I think it was doing a little bit too much in terms of combat variety. Now, allow me to explain myself and what I mean by that. I found myself often pressing one of 6 different buttons. I wasn't 100% sure which one I was doing. I was pressing incorrect buttons. I didn't know whether to attack or to throw the shield. I didn't know exactly what was happening, and I found myself, my muscle memory was having difficulty with the games. Like, for example, I'll give you an example. You have enemies with blue shields. What you need to do is you need to pull out your plasma gun, and then you shoot them and explodes the shields, and then on you go. Or you shoot some of the other shields, and then they turn red, and then you could throw your shield, right? And then be able to destroy them, and on and on and on. And then, like, it was just getting to the point where I'm like, holy mackerel, what am I doing here? So, like, you try to shoot, and then you're like, nope, that didn't work. Then you have to switch your weapon. Then you have to, like, use the plasma. Then you have to use a regular gun, turn it red, then throw the shield again, and then you go back to another gun. And I'm like, I'm spending more time switching through weapons and trying to figure out what the hell I'm trying to do with these different enemies than actually watching the enemies who are literally eating me alive while I'm sitting there trying to figure out which ones I am trying to utilize in order to take out the enemies. So that was a bit of a situation for me where I found myself in a point where I'm like, okay, this is a little bit much, folks. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden I'm like, well, do I press this one? Do I press this one? Do I press this one? And it got to there where you're trying to play the game, you're trying to have some combat here, and instead all you're doing is you're trying to remember which one which attack you're trying to utilize in order to take out these enemies. But like I said, if you put the difficulty up even just a little bit, you're basically dead, because by the time you figured out what the heck is going on, they've already chewed your face off, and then on you go. Now, in terms of combat, with headphones on, by the way, this is another thing. This truly is a choose-your-own-adventure. However, each weapon obviously has better advantages in different situations. Again, like I said, the red shields, you want to throw your shield. That's the chainsaw shield. After shooting the shields, they turn red and, of course, metal. It just, like I said, it just feels like it's just trying to do too much with too many new mechanics. I understand that you've added this shield to the situation. However, I think that by putting so many different confusing elements in there with this shield, it just seemed like it was a bit overkill. I think it could have been just as simple as, you could use it to parry, and then when people get close, you can, like, rev it up, just like Gears of War, and then you could just slice them in half or whatever you want to do. The other thing is that there is one move where you can actually throw the shield, and it sticks into an enemy, and it just kind of saws into them for a bit, so it kind of leaves them a little bit incapacitated, so you can run up and do something else to them, or shoot them, or whatever, do a glory kill. That's another thing. Sorry, now that I'm onto the subject, the glory kills were highly disappointing. I didn't think that they were very good at all. I found it to be a situation where you're just kicking them and they're exploding, right? It didn't have like a really cool animation of like grabbing them violently, pulling them towards you, reaching into their head, pulling out their gigantic bloody eyeball, you know what I mean? And then stepping on it or whatever they're going to do. A lot of times it was just like a Spartan kick and they just exploded. I understand you want to keep the game moving forward and the action moving forward, but it did kind of take away from what they had already introduced in 2016 and Eternal, which I thought were fantastic mechanics, and I really enjoyed them. And to me personally, I know some people said it got old for them. It did not get old for me. I really enjoyed those glory kills. Another thing, let's get into the way the game moves. We've got Doomslayer himself. He feels heavy. He feels weighty and tough, however, very fluid and fast. So you still had a lot of maneuverability, even though he was big and heavy. Again, like I said, with headphones on, you can literally hear the resounding thud of each footstep as he's lumbering along and just kind of, barreling through all these different areas. The other thing is too, like even from the smallest height, he just jumps off something, you land on the ground, you land on the ground with a thud and it literally cracks the ground that you're walking on. Each footstep is honestly like thunder. But either way, that was a couple of good things. Now, I wanted to get into something else about replayability when it comes to this game. The replayability in this game is outstanding. Why? Because, of course, as with all of id Software games, it has a plethora of different features, and it has a different of strategies and, of course, difficulties. It has a ton of different difficulties that you can go in there and be able to play. There are also a ton of upgrades. You can do the upgrades where you can go to the shrines and you can be able to buy upgrades for your shield, for your weapons, for everything in between. So I really enjoyed that too. So it's kind of like a first-person shooter RPG of sorts of sorts, folks. Don't get too excited. But either way, I did enjoy that. There's a ton of difficulty settings, like I just said, for you to try out. And of course, there's tons of content in order for you to complete. Like if you're an achievement hunter, if you're a trophy hunter, you can go back and back and back to be able to, like I said, up the difficulty, find secrets. There's tons of secrets, collectibles, little teddy bears, all kinds of stuff, power-ups, secret outfits. There are tons of things that you can go and find in this game, especially, like I said, if you're an achievement or trophy hunter, you want to get that platinum trophy or that 1,000 out of 1,000. This game has all kinds of stuff to make you want to go back and play this game. Now, let's get into the elements. Let's get into the elephant in the room here, folks. We have to talk about the Sentinel levels, and we have to talk about the Dragon levels. These were added after the fact. And the reason why they were added after the fact is that so that it would add some more variety to the game, because I know that some of the complaints, even though they scored incredibly well, some of the complaints with the other Doom games is that it's very repetitive. This is no different. I mean, you're literally just going from map to map to map to maps, very little variety in terms of the map design and everything else. And what are you doing? You're slaying demons. I mean, that's kind of the point of the game, right? But I do find that they tried to do something different with this, and honestly, I don't think it really worked out. Now, let me get into the Sentinel levels first. I want to talk about that. I mean, the Sentinel levels are cool, like you're in the giant mech robot, but ultimately, to me, it felt kind of pointless because you're literally doing the same thing you were doing when you were on the ground. I did find something really amusing though, where you're getting like messages in your like helmet or whatever from your higher ups, and they're like, "Okay, you've got to save the city. You've got to save the people." And as he's doing that, he's literally stomping on all his own soldiers. I'm like, dude, you're supposed to be saving the city. You just murdered 100,000 of your own soldiers because like there's a bunch of them fighting on a bridge, and then Doomslayer just comes up with his big gigantic mech and kicks over the damn bridge, and like everybody dies. And I'm like, bro, you might as well just stayed out of the suit. You probably would have saved a lot more lives. But either way, it was like a blind rampage. Not very relatable, to be quite honest. If you're looking at him as a hero, I mean, I know he's kind of like an anti-hero, but still, it's at the point. It's like, you just killed all your own guys. Like, it didn't, I don't know, it didn't make much sense to me. Anyways, the Sentinel levels, like I was saying, it basically felt like you're doing the same thing on the ground. Like you would be walking, you walk. All of a sudden you find a giant demon about the same size as you, and then all you do is you dodge, punch, shoot, die, move on. Then another dude walks in, and then you're like, dodge, punch, dodge, shoot, explode, move to the next guy, dodge, punch, and so on and so on. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, what are we doing here? It was actually more exciting to be on the ground and being able to rip and tear and shoot and do everything that we were doing before. So I did find that actually that really didn't help the game at all. In fact, it just slowed it down. So when I did get into the mech, I found all I wanted to do was get out of the mech and get back onto the ground and get playing again, which again leads me to believe that this was completely unnecessary. The other one I wanted to talk about very quickly are the Dragon levels. The Dragon levels, too long, very cool. I mean, that's so metal. You know what I mean? Like, that is so metal. Like, you're getting on there, music kicks in, and then all of a sudden you jump in on this giant, giant dragon and like the flaming arms and stuff. And I'm like, okay, wow, this is like super metal. But once you play it, you're like, holy crap, would you please finish? They were way too long and drawn out. Again, it just felt like they're doing too much with a new concept, and they're just trying to push it like, oh, let's do this now. We're going to do that now. We're going to do this. And it was supposed to be fun and thrilling and exciting, and all it was to me, it was just very redundant and boring. I just found that, and I found that with both levels. So now we're talking about the Dragon level and we're talking about the Sentinel level, both being pretty much useless. I mean, it was just something that didn't actually need to be in the game. I think that if they'd spend a little bit more time with the maps and the combat variety, the glory kills, and of course the enemies, the enemy variety, I think that would have been a much better served than adding these levels that really didn't feel like they were going anywhere. One quick thing I wanted to talk about: graphics, amazing, detailed. I don't really have to get into that. The frames, amazing, smooth, fantastic in a lot of ways. And it's nothing I would expect less from ID Software or id Software, however you like to call it. Last thing I want to complain about, folks. I mean, this is a review, okay? So you know I'm critiquing, okay? I'm not just being nitpicky. The music. The music was a complete failure, in my opinion. It was repetitive. It was unoriginal. Not very creative. I mean, for God's sakes, Colt Eastwood and I could have sat down and we could have crapped out a bunch of power chords and would have sounded a hell of a lot better than this. Like, to be honest, and I know this sounds really insulting, and I really don't mean it to be insulting. However, to me, the music in this honestly felt like it was just created by AI. Like, you know, like you just like say a few things to AI and be like, hey, can you crap out a bunch of power chords and make it sound like, I don't know, 1983 Metallica or whatever? And then it just does what it does. And it just felt like it was AI music. It didn't feel like it was like a real composer sat down and made this. And of course, I don't want to get into what they had done to the original composer and what happened there in the fallout with them. But either way, that's drama for another day, folks. Either way, that is my review for Doom the Dark Ages. I hope I didn't run off on too many tangents there. I tried to keep it as organized as humanly possible so we can understand how I feel about this. Now it's time for my conclusion and then give you my first initial score and then my marinated score. In conclusion, Doom the Dark Ages is a very competent game in a great reboot trilogy. However, the more I played it, it felt like more of the same and just seemed to go backwards from what was happening in the series before. Yes, I was very critical of Doom Eternal in terms of the traversal. I thought that a lot of it was redundant and silly and it took away from the core experience. However, the more I played this, I found that this was actually the step backward. And if I were to rate the three, I would say that Doom 2016 would be my favorite of the series. Doom Eternal was number 2 and Doom the Dark Ages number 3. I liked a couple of things with it, like, for example, the shield integration, the dragon and the sentinel levels. It wasn't enough to impress me beyond what I've already seen in this reboot trilogy. Now, the thing is, they tried something new, so I will commend them on that with adding those different levels and, of course, the different mechanic with the shield. But either way, ultimately, I found it wasn't enough to bring it above the other games that came before. Now, let's get into my initial score. My initial score I gave for this game, Doom the Dark Ages, was an 8 out of 10. And then after sitting on it and playing it 1.5 times and really, really thinking about it, I unfortunately had to drop it a 0.5. And my final marinated score for Doom the Dark Ages is a 7.5 out of 10. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the review, and if you stuck around to the very end, I can't thank you enough for all the support and the continued support of all the community and everybody else. But either way, that's the review for Doom the Dark Ages. Have yourself a great day, and stay magnificent.